one fatality involving a 17-month-old from the incident. The female adult victim is in serious but stable condition, and the adult male victim, we expect them to be released from the hospital forthcoming. As part of that, our initial dispatch that evening, the morning of the 26th, was at 1:34 a.m. Fire department units arrived on scene within 5 minutes. Our initial dispatch was 4 engine companies, 2 ladder companies, a heavy rescue company, and 2 battalion chiefs, and that's pretty standard on fire responses here in the city.
So we know that this was a result of a cooking fire type situation, and they didn't have working smoke detectors. So how do fires like that start that way? How can they be prevented?
So I would encourage people that when they're done cooking on their stovetop to remove any items from the stovetop. Accidents do happen. People think that they've turned off the stove, and it's in fact not. Or things, you place something beside the stove and it gets bumped. So anytime you leave something on the stovetop, you're opening yourself up to a potential accident happening. As far as the no working smoke detectors, that's what our investigation showed, that there were no working smoke detectors in the property. And we want to encourage people in the community. Our fire chief, Brian Evans, and our fire marshal, Scott Ruth, are really passionate about making sure people in our community have working smoke detectors. In fact, last year we installed 315 smoke detectors in our community, and we also went out and installed 301 batteries to make sure the existing smoke detectors were up to date. So we have programs in the city of High Point. If you are unable to afford a smoke detector, we will come out and install one in your home free of charge for you. If you can afford a smoke detector, we encourage you to go buy one, and we will come out and help you install it. Now, if it's a wired one, you may have to get an electrician or a handy person to do that, because our personnel are not equipped to rewire something in your house for you. But we will come out and assist you in changing batteries. We'll assist you in installing smoke detectors that you've purchased. And if you are unable to afford one, we have a website you can visit. You visit this highpointnc.gov website. You go to the fire department link there, click on request smoke detectors. It's got some criteria that you would need to meet. You fill out that form, and we will follow up with you and get you a smoke detector installed free of charge. The city of Greensboro also has that. You can go on their website and request smoke detectors, and there's a phone number, I have it here, for Guilford County. If you live in the county outside the cities of Greensboro, High Point, you can call 336-641-7565, and you can request smoke alarms. So the message we want to have there is there's no reason for anyone in Guilford County, city of High Point, city of Greensboro not to have working smoke detectors.
Mr. Welch, is there a number you can call in High Point?
You can call 336-883-3454, and you'll be able to leave a message, and I will return your call, and we will set up a time. 883-3454.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just wanted to stress, no one should ever feel bad about having to ask fire department for help with getting a smoke detector and installing a detector. Your crews are more than happy to do this service, right?
Absolutely. It's what we're here for, right? So we want to be able to prevent fires. If I can prevent it ahead of time, it's better than me helping you after the fact. So anytime we can prevent the loss of life, loss of property, that's what we're here to do. You shouldn't feel bad about it. I'm in the business of fire suppression, fire investigation, fire inspections. If you ask me to explain to you about taxes, for instance, since it's tax season, I don't know anything about that, so I would have to go to a professional about that. So if you have a question about smoke detectors or fire prevention, home safety, anything like that, we're more than happy to answer those questions for you.
One of the 2 adults that were injured in the fire, I figure because they were so badly burned, they were probably trying to put out the fire themselves. I'm not sure if you're able to confirm that, but I wanted to ask, can you tell us, for people who something similar like this happens to them, what are some ways that they can try to put out a fire safely, figuring that they're so badly injured in the hospital?
So I don't want to elaborate on specific injuries of the victims, but I will say that anytime you have a fire, I would suggest that if you think that it is beyond something you should handle, you should immediately evacuate, and you should call 911. If you discover a small incipient stage fire, which, something very small, and you feel as though you have an extinguisher, you've went through fire extinguisher training perhaps at your work, and you feel as though you can safely extinguish that, we want you to remember the acronym pass, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. If you have a fire extinguisher, you pull the pin, you aim the nozzle at the base of the fire, you squeeze the handle and sweep back and forth. You want to be sure that you have an exit at your back, and if that fire extinguisher doesn't work, we want you to immediately evacuate. Even if you do feel as though you have the fire completely out, we still ask that you call 911 because we would like to come out and check for fire extinction, make sure that fire is completely out. Again, if you don't feel safe, you obviously need to evacuate. Some other key points that I would remember to keep you safe in your home are when you go to sleep, we encourage individuals to sleep with their door closed. That buys you time if there's a fire in your kitchen, in your living room, right? You have working smoke alarms, early detection. You're notified. That door acts as a barrier for smoke, soot, heat. It gives you extra time, one, to evacuate yourself, or two, for fire department units to get on scene and help evacuate you.
I just want to ask real quick. I know you mentioned people buying fire detectors, smoke detectors, and things of that nature. Are there specific points or the best places that they should be placed in their homes?
Okay, so one common misconception is we want smoke detectors right above cooking appliances. Well, you don't want that because it's going to be going off all the time. You boil a pot of water, you have a little bit of steam while you're frying bacon, you're setting off your smoke alarm. So we encourage at least 10 feet from cooking appliances. So you don't necessarily want it in the kitchen, but you want it on each level of your home. So if you have a basement, first floor, second floor, you want a smoke detector on each of those. You want it inside and outside of your sleeping areas. So if you had, a 3-bedroom house, typical ranch style with a hallway, you'd want a smoke detector in the hallway outside of the bedrooms, and then you would want it inside each bedroom door. And you want that mounted as high as it can be in there. So really high on the wall, ceiling's even better because obviously heat rises, smoke rises, and that's where you're going to get the early detection. We would encourage that interconnected smoke detectors are the best, meaning if I have a fire, on the first floor of my home, that smoke detector is triggered, it sets off the smoke detectors in the rest of the home. But if, that may not be affordable, or it may not be the most economical for people that have older homes. If you can buy a smoke detector with a 10-year sealed battery or something like that, those are the types of detectors we provide. They're not interconnected, they're 10-year sealed battery. So really any smoke detector would be nice, but we would encourage you to, I would say interconnected are the best.
Mr. Wells, what's the basic cost of a regular or traditional smoke detector that you put in a home?
So you can go typically $40 or $50. So it can get pricey if you start trying to go, inside each room, outside each room, each level, and that's why we have the cost-free program here at the City of High Point, where we can help offset some of that. But we also ask people that can afford it to purchase it themselves, because it's not an infinite supply of smoke detectors, and we want to be able to provide it to people that really can't afford it.
$40 to $50.
Yes, sir.
On average.
Yep.
Are there any laws on the books, either in the city of High Point or statewide, that require smoke detectors in rental units?
So North Carolina General Statute, particularly Chapter 42 rather, does require, it sets out some guidelines for what landlords have to provide for tenants, but then there is also some responsibility on the tenants as well. So that general statute, also not being part of the criminal set of chapters, is self-enforced, really, is how it is written. So the landlord kind of self-enforces that on themselves. So yeah, there are statutes that say what the landlord needs to provide and what the tenant needs to do as far as upkeeping that. The fire marshal's office, unfortunately, doesn't have the authority to inspect duplexes, single-family residences, things like that. So there's really no enforcement action that our office would be able to take on preemptively ensuring there's smoke detectors provided.
So unfortunately, a lot of it's on the renter.
It is, indeed. So we would encourage people that if you are renting to contact your landlord if you don't have working smoke detectors and request them. At the time that you feel that they're not providing that, I encourage you to reach out to your local fire marshal's office, and we will be more than happy to educate the landlords on what is required in the state of North Carolina.
Mr. Wells, just to clarify that point, a landlord would be required to install one and then a tenant would maintain it, like changing the battery?
It does require the tenant to maintain changing the batteries, but it also requires the landlord to go back in there and verify that that smoke detector is still in place. You see a lot of landlords actually write it into the lease or rental agreement that any tampering with that smoke detector, the removing the smoke detector, could be grounds for being evicted or asked to move out and leave the property. And I don't think that's a bad idea, because that makes some accountability on both ends to show that, one, we're installing them, we're going to come back and check it in a year, and two, we want to ensure that it's in place and working to ultimately protect the occupant of the property.
You mentioned that there were like some 300 something fire or smoke detectors that you guys gave out last year. Are those all calls that you've gotten, or do you guys do proactive stuff like go out? Because I've been with other fire departments in the area that they sometimes go out and door knock and say, hey, do you need a smoke detector?
So both. We have the program where obviously you can request them, and we will go out any time of year and do it. And then we also do a spring and fall canvas. So the state of North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal pushes a smoke detector Saturday, which they provide free smoke detectors to local fire departments where we can go out and do that. And then we partner with the American Red Cross, typically around the month of October, and they will provide us with smoke detectors, and we go out and provide them with the manpower we knock on doors and install smoke detectors at that time as well.
Question, how often do you find that when there's a fire that smoke detectors aren't in the home? Is it something that's...
So either not in the home or not working, I would say 40 to 50% of the time. So they may be present, but the battery's been removed, or the smoke detector's taken down, or the smoke detector's over 10 years old. It is not uncommon at all for us to go out to install new smoke detectors and the smoke detector be 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. We encourage, and the best practice by NFPA and even the manufacturer recommendations on smoke detectors are at 10 years you should replace that detector. If your detector's chirping, that could be an end of life thing, and your detector would need to get replaced. So I would say 40 to 50% of the time we go out, maybe even not on a fire, but to install new detectors, and we find that this detector's 20 years old and the battery's not in it anymore.
And do you think that with some of those fires, they could have maybe been prevented, or the damage could have been less if there were smoke detectors?
So anytime you can have early notification, that's a positive thing. One, to get you to evacuate the house for the loss of life aspect, and anytime we can get early notification to the fire department, typical response time in the city of High Point is 3 to 5 minutes. So anytime we can get there earlier, obviously we can prevent property damage. Fire doubles in size about every 30 seconds. So the sooner we can get notified and get the ball rolling to get crews en route to your home, the less damage there's going to be.
So just to confirm, in terms of renters, you're saying under that statute that landlords are required to install them and verify that they're still in place, but they don't have to make sure that they're still working. That's on the renter.
So I'm not a legal expert, and it's a rather lengthy general statute. My understanding on it is that yes, they're required to be in place, and yes, they're required to be working. The general statute has some things in there about installing tamper-proof smoke detectors. So you would I would encourage renters to test their smoke alarm monthly. That's a best practice by NFPA. Just jump up there, press the test button, make sure it activates. But yes, once a year they go in there and make sure the detector's in place and is working.
How about if you own a house? Is it a similar requirement?
So they don't actually put a requirement on the homeowner. So in your initial build, obviously to get your certificate of occupancy, there's certain things that have to be in place detector-wise, but there's no general statute requirement to have a detector if you own your home outright and you are living there. Now, I'm sure your insurance company would probably want you to have working smoke detectors, and we would still encourage those individuals to test their detectors monthly, to change their batteries when they set their clocks forward and back every 6 months. If it's a 10-year seal battery, you still want to test them monthly, and you still want to make sure that you're following that manufacturer recommendation on the 10-year cycle. If your detector's over 10 years old, you need to look at getting a new one and replacing it.
Do you have any in the community in High Point, certain areas that have is it just kind of mixed throughout?
So I have found that typically not having detectors can be a socioeconomic thing. So there's areas where people obviously can't afford them, so they do not have them. That kind of follows where they rent at. So rental properties typically have less smoke detectors, and that's where we install more smoke detectors. Now, I will say home ownership is typically where we install more batteries at. So you go out and those individuals haven't replaced their batteries or haven't replaced their smoke detector in 20 years. So we're swapping new detectors for old detectors and replacing batteries more where home ownership is. And then in rental properties, we're typically installing smoke detectors where there are none.
And then, are there any specific brands that you would suggest people get for smoke detectors, or anything that they shouldn't get?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's one brand's better than the other. Your home improvement stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace, any local hardware store you can purchase smoke detectors at, and those are going to be reputable. What I would encourage you to do is there's a UL listing, a little symbol. It'll be a circle with a U and a L in it. If it's got that on it, that's been tested by Underwriters Laboratory, and that is a smoke detector that you would want to purchase. I would discourage people from going on Amazon or someplace like that, Temu, one of these places, and buying a smoke detector that's not UL listed. You want to look for that UL listing or FM listing, Factory Mutual, to make sure that it's been tested by independent laboratory and it's going to perform like it should.
You kind of touched on this a bit ago, but can you help people understand, how quick a fire moves? Like once it gets going, how quickly it moves, and the importance of, when a smoke detector will recognize it and alert you versus when, you will notice the fire, and how much it can grow in that amount of time, I guess.
Yeah, so a smoke detector being in a room is just like having a person standing there 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So if you're asleep in your bed and the smoke detector's in your living room, obviously that's going to alert you quickly. A fire can double in size every 30 seconds. So that fire that sets off the smoke detector in the living room, obviously you're going to have preemptive notification by that detector in there before you would ever know that there was a fire going on in your back, if you're asleep in a back bedroom. So fire doubles in size every 30 seconds, and having smoke detectors strategically placed throughout your house can help alert you.
This fire has been a tragedy, but when your crews arrived on the scene, everyone was already out of the house? Can you confirm that? No,
so the adult female victim was actually removed by a neighbor. They did an excellent job. They realized that there was a fire. A neighbor heroically took it upon themselves to enter and look for occupants of that house, located the adult female victim and removed her to the driveway. Fire crews arrived on scene around that time and went in and located the 2 additional victims and removed them from the apartment.
And then just to tag on that, you mentioned it, we talked about putting out a small fire yourself. How important it is to it's okay to just get out. You don't have to try and say, get out, let the fire department show up and, let you guys handle it.
Absolutely. I would encourage people, that would be the key takeaway, is get out of the house. There's nothing, property can be replaced. I realize that you may have heirlooms, you may have things that are near and dear to you, but we can't replace that human life. So anytime that there is an incident that you are, put you in a panic, you're unsure about, evacuate the house, call the professionals, let us come out. Our crews train on it daily. We have the proper equipment to do it. Let us come out and put that fire out.
And just to piggyback off that, you said the father in this situation, just to make sure I got that right, you said it earlier, he is to be released soon, correct, from the hospital?
Yeah, that is our anticipation from speaking with hospital staff, is that he will be released, yes.
Possibly today?
I'm not sure on the time frame. Possibly today, tomorrow. I understand that he is to be released, though.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Welch.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
These microphones off of it.